You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
All right, here we go again. I turned down the volume on the intro. I think that was wrong. I sound louder. I don't know. I sounded more quiet when I was listening to it before. Got no idea what's happening here. It's like I'm in the Twilight Zone. A coronavirus Twilight Zone. So Satan is up in anti-power, and that's obvious. But if you get too political in your mind, if you get too one-minded, I wouldn't say one-minded, but one-sided view of the world where you're trying to grind an axe in your neighbor's head every day, you're going to miss what's actually going on because you can't look neutrally at anything. And that's what's going on to a certain degree. Satan's getting everybody so fired up that people can't look at things neutrally. And it is a political era right now. I mean, we are in an election year, a major election year. All right. So, it did save lives. Brett Bart is out there as Bart's butt, trying to muckrake. There's a lot of reasons why those cities would have issues. It has nothing to do with the lockdown. The lockdown is only one aspect of it. Obeying the lockdown is the second aspect of it. And I would say most likely in those communities there are those issues. Now, I didn't say this. It wasn't meant to be racial, and it's not going to be meant as racial. There's a Mexican guy here, an older Mexican gentleman. He's from Mexico. He hangs out with Mexican people all day. He knows Mexican people. That's about his life. But he says, you know, if you tell a Mexican person to do something, like don't go out of your house, the Mexican person is going to leave their house and go out just because you said not to go out. It's just the way Mexican people are. So that's what we're dealing with to a certain degree. Uh-oh, something's going on here. I hear some funny noises. Hello? Are they gone? Are they still here? But that's what he said. He said the Mexican people, they don't appreciate being told what to do. He goes, we're hard, essentially he's Mexican. We're hardheads. We're just, you tell us we got to stay in, we're going out. It's just the way we are. If you didn't say anything, we might stay in. So I really enjoy being around Mexican people, as I usually do. However, the CIA took over Santa Fe in New Mexico and had a lot of Mexican people working to destroy my life. So that was kind of a crazy ride, and cartels were involved, and CIA doesn't care. I mean, it's not about stopping drug dealing. It's manipulating it for their own benefit. It's always been that for them, and it's not national benefit. It's personal and criminal organization benefit. So again, a lot of that's going on, you know, and he had some other things to say, and I'm not going to get too deep into that conversation because it's just, you know, it's out there and that's enough. Somebody's knocking. You going to answer the door? Not the popo. Well, the popo needs to answer the door. Rabbi Jesus is calling. So it did work. We did save lives. Go away already. I mean, if you're trying to turn into it a political point, I think somebody is really taking you in the wrong direction based upon how people generally feel in the nation. if you're trying to make people believe that a conservative theory is that we never had the lockdown, you've cost President Trump that additional 5% of support from the general public. At least. Because they don't want to hear it. It seems so phony. Now, of course, there are people, I wouldn't say 50% of the nation, there's probably about 20 to 30% of the nation that appreciates that. But the rest really don't. It was a great work of government. Very rarely does it take place as well. I'll tell you, government doesn't operate like you all think it does. And then, of course, because we're private sector, we're more efficient. Well, as President Trump learns, the private sector only works so far in government. The government has to move in a government manner at certain points, or it's going to fall apart. What worked all those months to keep the market up wouldn't work during COVID-19 because you actually had to do some government stuff before it would work. And I knew that. And of course, if we didn't do it when we did, there would have been other economic issues. We would have still had issues. Will we see as many businesses failing? Probably so, because it's not necessarily the lockdown. It's once the lockdown is lifted, nobody's actually going back to work in those places because nobody's coming in to buy things. So again, Victoria's Secret is out of business. If you're a Christian, I'm sure, if you're the purity set in Christianity, you find that to be a benefit. So if we didn't, have this thing, they wouldn't have went out of business. But these are the things that people don't understand. And I think some people do. They're just not going to say anything because they don't want to be hit by the bot people. Oh, don't you understand that it was nothing? It never would have done anything? And people die anyway? I think we handled it well. I think Texas is doing well because God blessed us. And if you look, the governor didn't decide to be political around it. I mean, there were some small political battles, but the governor wasn't being political in what he was saying and doing. Now, if he was a Democratic Party governor, he may have said things a little bit different, but yet if he was still that same personality, he would have stayed within a range of government topic that's pertinent to what we need to do and what we did do. And I just received some information about the treatment of people here in the hospitals, and that they're really, you go in there and that's it. They're not playing around. They don't care. I don't think they care what insurance you have. They don't care about anything except you surviving COVID-19. I'm not going to get into the details because there's a conversation with somebody with their doctor who was very upfront about how the therapies are being approached in Smith County here. But believe me, if somebody passes here, it's not for the lack of trying. And I'm not saying that they are any different in any other county. However, I have direct information. There's a reason that we succeeded so far. Now, I hope that continues. I don't want to jinx us, as they say. But one thing was sure, that the medical community here is well-grounded and head and shoulders above many medical communities. And again, if you're in a certain medical community and you are restricted by administration or whatever it is, that's understood also. I think here, doctors rule the roost when it comes to what's going to be done and how it's going to be done. I think that's what enabled a lot of my medical treatment since I've been here, where in other communities nothing would work. Again, the mind is freer. The medical mind is freer here. But this, let's say I was Paul. I would feel like I was in Greece or something like that, where the thinkers are. So again, we have people that can think a little freer here in Smith County, and that includes our doctors. So again, that's a kudos, a hats off, a job well done. And hopefully we continue to move out of the grips of COVID-19. So in government, when something happens, you can't say, let's see, what's the best case scenario? You can't say that. You can't do that. You can't do that in the military, and you can't do it in the government if you're a real government person. Now, I may not agree with everything that Fauci, whatever his name is, and Birx does, but yet they're within that range of government process that's more than acceptable. So again, a lot of people just really don't know a hoot about how government has to operate. Because if you don't operate like that, you can't have hindsight 2020 and go, see, that's what you all do. It's just so wet noodle. It's so wet noodle. It's nothing. It's worthless. You have to sit there in government, because when you do that, when you play that game, then what do you think happens? You don't act, somebody doesn't act, and then there's failure. So again, I still believe it would have been horrific if we hadn't have shut down. And when the shutdown happened and we were thinking about opening early, I said 30 days. Give it at least 30 days, maybe a little bit longer. And that's probably legitimate before everything else would have crashed. And I was telling, my friend says, I can't find Lysol spray. I said, well, that's why we have to open, because she's all freaked out about it. In the beginning, she was like, I want to go to church. I can't believe I can't go to church, because that's where she gets her social interaction. I said, well, it's probably not the best for you right now. You have health problems. Just give it a little time. I said, get online. I said, look at this as a Passover moment. It's like a modified Passover. And then, of course, we have Rabbi Shimon, who spent many years in a cave. So these things are not without... Facebook sent me a message, a notification, and went ding. These things are not without precedence. So those of you who have lived charmed lives, even if you grew up in the ghetto, come on, I've seen it. And I've spoke about it before. Some guys live in the ghetto, poor all their life, but they live a great life. Always have a woman. Some of them, they want 4 or 5, they got 4 or 5. People cooking for them. They show up, there's a big meal. They don't have to cook, they don't have to take care of themselves, they're just living that blessed life. And more power to them if that's what life they want to live. I'm not here to judge them, I'm not God. But I was able to witness to God how money is not a identifier of certain things. Because you could be a wealthy person but be cursed and have the worst life ever. And if you could understand God's view of the earth, you would understand that Epstein had a horrible life. The best thing for him would have been an average person. But I knew people like Epstein existed. And that's what partially got me in trouble. And of course, a lot of these deep state people have similar skeletons in their closet. And that's why they always are out there hunting the person that's supposedly the criminal when it's usually them, or was them at one time. You don't know how many times they try to get me to investigate something. I refuse to do it anymore. Because I helped them, I sent the information, and they try to turn it around on me. So again, that CIA case, even though he took money, got to wonder if they actually spycraft operated him into that, because that's what they were looking to do to General Flynn. They were looking to steer him into something they could use against him, such as him taking money. And of course, there was some conversation about that, but it appeared to be legitimate enough, based upon his notification of others, that it probably wasn't a case to be had. So again, when the people that you're working with are corrupt, and he learned that, it doesn't matter what you do, how you dot your I's or cross your T's, they're still going to do what they're going to do to be corrupt. So it did save lives. What we did save lives. Did it ruin the economy? The economy was going to crash anyway. It just was going to crash. Most people don't even want to go out. I mean, you have a group of people that are very loud and they're into protesting, but they're very, very small percentage of the nation. They can't carry the nation on their back. So again, if you're in a local retail outlet, you need to make sure that you're a clean person and you're not deep stating the community. Then your businesses will do better. Your lives will be better. I know it seems like that's all there is for you to do well and be considered somebody within your community, but it's not worth it. So again, as far as a church, I've said that I don't find that there's authority for governments to regulate churches and to close them, but there is the requirement for the church to do something right, and God does frown on you taking spiritual license and tempting the Lord your God. You should try to minimize God's need to protect you. You know, if I was probably in the lives that you had, I would look even more forward to the opportunity to spend time in my closet, is what Jesus said, and pray in your closet. Jesus never authorized a church. And did you ever notice Jesus would always go off by himself a lot of times? Did you ever notice that? Denied himself the presence of others. So it wasn't always about that. Now, Paul and the others, set up the church real nice, had it structured real nice. Jesus said, "Greater works shall you do." But again, the church has turned into the "greater works shall you do." It just is. I mean, if you have a circle the wagons organization and you feel comfortable with one another and you feel famous for one another, that's great. But that's not the world we live in. Again, if you were Paul, or to take what Paul actually said, not just that part of it, then maybe you would understand things a little bit more. And the church would be a valid entity at that point. Because again, you can be Samaritan's purse all you like, and I'm not saying anything, it's just a good example of somebody that's a rich man, that lived a rich man's life since childhood. And Billy Graham wasn't too bad off either in life. And you're doing something, it doesn't necessarily mean that your heart isn't causing the problem that you're fixing or pretending to fix. Again, that's why God says, now don't look at Franklin Graham's stature. I've rejected him. I didn't say that. But he could. And that's where we have to be. But we're not. That's why the church is failing. And I did say years ago, come out of her, because it became Babylon. If you're working for the deep state, you're Babylon. I don't want to hear how you're keeping people safe by psychologically operating them and psychologically torturing them for government entity. And of course, there are some CIA people that were part of it in the one church that I was in. There's no doubt that that's who they were. They were embedded. That's the problem. They're embedding them falsely to take over organizations and businesses, or at least, structure it for their own use. So you might have a Walmart, you got 2 CIA officers embedded in it. For corruption, actually. An FBI officer, agent, could be in there. A DHS, pretending to be a certain investigation, but they're actually there working a deep state shadow government criminal enterprise spycraft racketeering operation. You have a church like that. You have a synagogue like that. You have a Hare Krishna temple like that. Because these people go overseas. Same thing in Russia. You could have GRU. You could have whoever. I don't know what was the real story, but when I was leaving Naples, I ran into this guy that was a sheriff's department officer, I think. Now, I never knew where he was coming from or where he was going. I just was trying to be the nicest guy I could be for him. And tried to be social with him. And his wife was in my yoga class. And tried to just be a neutral person. Now, when it was all over, I think, like at the end, right before I left, he was getting divorced, supposedly. And he had a lot of tattoos on him. And, he probably had a wild, young life. But he had a beard, and he had a hat on, and he said, I'm going to Israel. He said, you should do too. You should be an Orthodox Jew. I'm going to be, a rabbi and all these things. I didn't know what he was going to be or where he was coming from or if it was real, because they were psychologically operating me the whole time in Naples, Florida. For all I know, it was a setup to get me to go to Israel, because I was Googling Tel Aviv and a couple other places. I was thinking of moving to Israel for a period of time, but it never manifested. I was spending my life just staying above where they were trying to put me, 6 feet under. So again, that, didn't make sense at the time that he was, excuse me there. Got to move my headphone cord there. That he was doing that, but maybe he was. I just didn't have time to investigate it at that point. And that's the way you have to live your life when they're doing this. You have to investigate everything and everybody that's doing anything to you, at least to the point of analyzing the cost benefit of any activity with the person. So again, what we did helped. Do you want to go back to church? Fine. But there are ways that we all can look at this and believe that God is here to bless us with time to pray in our closet, with time to understand what Rabbi Shimon went through when he was in that cave for 12 years or so. And there are others. So I think it's a matter of how you look at it and how God leads you. If God leads you in a certain direction, then God leads you in that direction. I can't deny that that exists, and I've told you that all along. But again, you're tempting the Lord your God by opening up, and you should let your people know that there's something else for them also. They don't have to come to church. You don't want them to feel guilty for not coming to church. You got to make them feel comfortable coming to church if they want to. Matthew 4, 5 through 7, King James Version. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple. lot of you preachers are sitting on a pinnacle of the temple. That's your life. You live the spoon-fed life, even if you were poor growing up. Or even if you're poor today, people take care of you. You've had good lives. I've seen plenty of church communities where that's what they are. They're just a social organization that care for one another. And, if they say no, then it's no. You have to go. And now they have the FBI and the CIA to help them along. So you're sitting on that pinnacle of the temple. And maybe the devil took you up there into that holy city and sat you on the pinnacle of that temple. And saith unto him, and several said, if thou be this big preacher, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands. So Satan may have said to you, if you're a big preacher, open your church up, and God will protect you, right? Protect everybody in your community. What do you think? Is there silence in your mind now? And saith unto the preacher, and saith unto him, if thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. And then 7, the number of completion. Jesus said unto him, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Or is number 7 for you? The preacher said, we're going to open that church. God will take care of us. Are you tempting the Lord your God today? Are you requiring God to protect you more than you need to be protected? Number 7, number of completion. Jesus said unto him, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot to learn in this world, and I don't know anything. But what I do recognize is something that I can witness. Because God's the only one that can tell me anything. But I'll tell you, we are being reckoned among the transgressors. Those of us that have been victimized by the deep state. It's not something we wanted or something we asked for. It's not even something they wanted or something they asked for. They are directed by Satan. They are part of the beast, and they are antichrists, devils, witches, and sorcerers, and they have no choice but to be the evil they've become. Well, praise God in all that you do. Praise God.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.